Hi, everyone. To those of you watching on our YouTube channel and those listening on Spotify, welcome to Canadian Agriculture Unpacked. I'm your host, Bob Friesen, with co-host Wayne Easter, 28-year veteran of the House of Commons, former Solicitor General, and longtime chair of the House of Commons Committee, and Jack Wilkinson, former president of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and the International Federation of Agriculture Producers, now known as World Farmers. And our special guest today, Norm Hall, president of Saskatchewan Mustard, and his executive director, Rick Mitzel. Welcome, gentlemen. I want to thank today's sponsor in part, Keystone Agricultural Producers, also known as CAP, Manitoba's General Farm Organization, an organization that talks to farmers, listens to farmers, and develops farmer-based agricultural policy. And a special thanks also to our technical producer who works feverishly behind the scenes, Aj Thakur. All right, guys, we want to talk about the mustard industry in Saskatchewan. I don't know, it certainly was news to me. When I dug into this, I found out that Saskatchewan actually is responsible for 50% of global mustard exports. And so we're going to touch on trade a little bit, but we are certainly also going to want to touch on the genetically modified canola issue that these gentlemen have, and we'll talk about that and talk about trade within the context of that. But before we go there, Wayne, I got to ask you a question. I mean, it seems sometimes like for every two really good steps Carney makes, he falters and trips a little bit on another issue. And the appointment of the CUSMA Advisory Committee seems to be one of those. There's an awful lot of very, very good people on there, don't get me wrong, and agriculture is represented as well, but there's no one from what I would consider to be exclusively the primary production sector or supply management. What do you think about it?
Well, I do believe I'm a little worried about that myself. I did talk to the Minister of Agriculture, Heath MacDonald, yesterday about it, that there should be a greater representation from the agriculture sector, specifically producers. But I guess so. I think there's a shortfall in terms of representation from the agriculture industry. We're a big industry, and a lot of people on there from auto and the unions. So it seems to me to be a little at a balance. And I would worry that they may talk about their individual interests rather than strategically how they have to play with the United States. I chaired Canada US for 11 years, and I think there's a lot more we could be doing in these negotiations by talking to the likes of Chuck Grassley, Lindsey Graham, and on goes the list. I do know in the last Canada-US CUSMA negotiations, right down to the last 5 or 6 hours, Chuck Grassley was really helping us out in terms of our position in those negotiations. So I don't think they're strategic enough as yet, but we'll have to give it a little time and see where it goes.
Well, and we know it's going to be challenging. I mean, we do $75 billion of reciprocal trade with the U.S. in agriculture, so it is a big market for us. And in fact, we'll turn now then to the mustard industry. We know that Saskatchewan mustard exports a lot of product to the U.S. But guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about the mustard industry?
Yeah, like you said, Bob, we supply 50% of the world's mustard. I've met with some of the key mustard processors around the world. I was in France in December, talked to companies like Unilever. They basically told us that they really like Canadian mustard because it's of a higher quality than they can get anywhere else in the world. So the environment that they grow it in Canada allows the seed size to be bigger and more consistent, which is really a strong benefit when you're processing mustard on a large scale like they're doing. So they mix it with other mustards, but they needed to kind of keep the quality level up there. There's, when I did some checking on what the value of that product is to the world, it's we sell about 300. It averages to be right around $300 million a year of mustard gets sold to other countries in the world.
That's amazing. The other interesting thing about it is, and off-roading a little bit here, when I was a teenager, I had a lot of problem with leg pain. And my parents had something, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was some sort of a mustard lotion. It burned like heck on the skin, but I tell you, it did the trick when it came to pain. So mustard is used for food and it's used for medicinal purposes. Is that right?
Yeah, there's you can Google it, but there's even hockey players that will take mustard and they'll consume it between shifts on the ice to avoid muscle cramping. So it's one of those crops that has a lot of really unique features to it. We're in another market with it as well, and that's biofumigation. In the last few years, there's been a trend away from biofumigation chemical products. A lot of them have been deregistered now because they're harsh on the soil. And before they had those products, they used mustard, and now they're going back to mustard. So we've actually developed a mustard specifically for that market now, and it's called AAC Guard. So what the farmers do, they let it grow to flowering stage. They mow it or just work it into the soil, and then the fumes that come off the plant kill the diseases like verticillium in the soil.
Now, about 70% of the mustard grown in Canada, I think it's 70%, you guys can correct me, is grown in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Why isn't it grown in PEI, Wayne?
I guess our climate isn't right there. We don't have enough acreage in order to do it. I don't think, not that I know of anyway, I don't think anybody grows mustard here. We grow canola, but not mustard.
Is it grown in Ontario, Jack?
No. Actually, Jack, our numbers show that about 80% is grown in Saskatchewan, and then there's some grown once again in the Palliser Triangle region of Alberta as well. And although mustard's grown in every crop district within Saskatchewan, 80% of our mustard is grown in the Palliser Triangle. It's an area that is much better suited for, well, maybe not better suited, but it grows well in the triangle.
So is it a good cash crop? Like, does it tide you over if other crops don't do as well, or is it very volatile too?
Well, the markets are very, they fluctuate a lot. And so a producer might, or a number of producers will grow lots and get a big crop the one year, oversupply the market, and then they hold on to it for a year or two. But it can be very lucrative, or it can be just a break even, depending on the year and the markets.
Almost sounds like farming, Norm.
Damn, you got it close. Rick mentioned the mustard used in sports, and one of the biggest ones is mustard at ball games. The Americans love their mustard on their dogs, and it's stated that there'll be a rail car of mustard used at a Yankees home game. So whether that's accurate or not, but that was one analogy that we had heard at one point.
That's a lot of mustard.
How many hectares or tons are you producing, generally speaking, on a year?
Rick, you'll know that one.
What we need normally is about 500,000 acres to make the mustard industry go. That's what they need for production to produce, the amount of mustard that's required in the world. Once you get above that, that's when you start running into the situations Norm was talking about, where you get oversupply. Last year, for example, we were 630,000 acres, and we got in an oversupply situation. So the price is back down now this year, and so it takes a year to kind of work that through the system. But yeah, we normally need about 500,000 acres, to meet the demand that the world is looking for.
You could organize the market and manipulate inventory and prices if you had control over the entire market. the same way transnational companies manipulate the inventory of wheat, for example. Well, that's a suggestion. You don't look very excited about it. I know you guys, and this is where we're going to want to get into the heart of the issue. And you have an issue looming on the horizon, if not already overhead, and that has to do with GMOs. And I do know that you also export mustard to Europe, Belgium. Do you do you export any to India, because it's used in Indian cuisine as well?
I think we do some, yes, yes. If they get in they produce a lot of mustard themselves, but
Okay.
it's most of it is for their own consumption. They don't do a lot of exporting.
Okay, so talk to us about the GMO issue.
BASF has developed a Brassica gynea, which is the same species as mustard, and it's been around for a while. That one, Sask Wheat Pool had it back in the mid '90s, and it's Brassica. It's a canola quality mustard, is what a lot of people knew it as. So it's a mustard that you can get canola quality oil off of, and their thought process is that they can expand the acres into the more drier areas, like Norm mentioned, the Palliser Triangle area. So they're looking at launch. They've gone a fair ways down the road, a little bit more, a little further than we would have liked for sure, but they've gone down the road a bit, and they're hoping to launch in either 2029 or 2030. Our concern is that there's different levels of contamination. Like right now, you can grow condiment mustard beside a GMO canola field, and because canola and mustard are two different species, you don't get much outcrossing, so you don't get much pollen carryover or any of that kind of stuff. But when you take a Brassica gynea plant that's got canola quality mustard beside a Brassica gynea or another brassica field of condiment mustard beside it, you're going to get a lot of pollen flow and a lot of exchange through bees, through wind, so on and so forth. And then once you get the volunteers of this GMO crop in the ground, then you've really got a problem, because everybody knows how strong those products are with staying in the ground and hanging around for a long time.
So you're worried about cross-contamination from pollination, but what about segregation on the farm or even in your machinery? Like, would you not get a lot of cross-contamination in machinery?
You
I
would
take
for
it. I
sure.
take it.
Yeah.
It's hard to clean out one from the other.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes farmers are very diligent in cleaning out equipment, and sometimes they're not, right? So, depending on the things they've got going, but yeah, that's definitely a thought, and another issue as well, Bob. But and then you take it one step further. What about the grain handling facility, right? Are they gonna handle that properly? They're gonna make sure there's no GMO in there. And another example is a couple of years ago we had mustard was $100 a bushel. Well, if you've got something that's worth $17 a bushel and you can mix it with something that's worth $100 a bushel and get a little extra margin out of it, you might do that, right? And if you do that, then you got a real issue.
Good grief! $100 a bushel?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're back to where a farmer could make enough money on a quarter section to live on.
So
For that year.
so that cross contamination, what does it do in the marketplace? Are the countries that you're exporting to, or the companies, are they really concerned? I mean, what's the down the line impact on the supply chain?
So Brassica gynea in the mustard is both Oriental and brown mustard. The Oriental mustard goes into the Asian market, mostly or a lot of it to Japan, and the brown, the majority of our production goes into the European market for their specialty mustards, and they both Europe and Japan are non-GMO, and we've got a letter from the Japanese buying co-op saying they pretty much will not accept our mustard. But surprisingly, the American market where the majority of our yellow goes, as well as some of the brown and oriental. They are certified non-GMO, and they don't want to lose that status. And they haven't come out with a letter yet, but they don't want to lose that status. They don't want any GM in their product. Rick talked about the Canadian market, that this canola oil quality Juncea will be introduced here in 29 or 30. Well, the plan is to introduce it into the U.S. in 27. So that pushes them ahead, and I'm not sure what that's going to do to their market. So it's an uphill battle dealing with both BASF and our regulatory system.
I'll tell you what happens here in PEI. We sell non-GMO canola to Japan, and they are very, very stringent on that. And there is GMO crops around Prince Edward Island, but they will actually come here. It's not a big crop of canola in PEI,
Yeah.
but they will actually come here during the summer season. And as long as the canola field is a mile away from a GMO crop, it's okay to ship, or it's okay to sell.
Yeah.
But that's how strict they are. They actually come here, they survey the fields, and they make sure there's no other GMO crops within a mile of that product. So I understand what you're saying in Japan.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jack.
But I think both Norm and Rick are describing the fact that you have a real issue down the road when you start getting seed contamination in the soil. I mean, I remember back many, many years ago when there was talk that some seed companies wanted to have GM wheat, and the survey was done of the buyers at that time period, and where the major crops were going to, they didn't want it. And so basically it was held off the market because of the fear of not the first couple of 3 years, but once you start dealing with this question, you start to affect the rotation the farmers got available to them. You talk about, the elevation system all of a sudden doesn't work for the general crop. You basically have to have IP systems on the farm as well, containerize everything for shipping. So the whole industry changes, and sometimes the easiest solution is to not introduce the seed if it doesn't match with the farmer's agronomic desires and the companies and countries you're selling it to. And this is where, I'm a huge fan of regulation. You can't just let everybody do what they want to do for their personal gains if, in fact, it puts at risk. And I mean, this mustard seed will last in the soil for decades. So you end up then you start having herbicide problems. The list goes on and on and on, and the potential, as they're describing, is the actual loss of an export market that's been extremely successful to a lot of producers in Saskatchewan and Alberta. It's a travesty, quite frankly, that it got here.
Well, and I mean back to what Wayne said about having one crop a mile away from the other crop. That's good for one summer, but what about the voluntary growth in subsequent years where you suddenly have voluntary growth right beside the non-GMO crop? But the other issue is that when it comes to this is I think you mentioned it already, the regulation to control this, and who cares about it? And that goes back to what we talked about earlier in the Custom Advisory Committee. Yeah, sure, you have some transnational agricultural companies involved, but all of us know that they care only about shareholder value, right? They don't care about the plight they put farmer producers into when they suddenly have a GMO crop. They care only about shareholder value.
But Bob, what you're talking about is that the processors turn the tap off in these countries that have got restrictions on GM product. The industry's over because
Exactly.
when you're exporting 50% it really is a small industry when you ratchet back to your domestic market.
And
Yeah, it's interesting, Jack, that you say you compared it to the wheat market because the last week or so I've been talking to some plant breeders and they said you're living the exact same scenario that they went through with GMO wheat. And they said for the exact same reasons, your volunteers, your pollen flow, contamination at the farm, at the elevator level, all those reasons is why GMO wheat was stopped. And we're looking at the exact same model with some GMO mustard.
Oh, I remember, Jack, we had a huge fight with Monsanto. And in fact, you started it. And by the time I became president, I think it was almost over. I remember Monsanto inviting Jennifer Higginson and I to the Rideau Club or something like that. It was some establishment. I was wearing a suit and a dress shirt, but didn't have on a tie. But they had a closet full of ties that they could give to people that weren't wearing one. So I had to wear a tie. But they bought us lunch and said, we're giving up on the fight. He said, we know now you guys don't want it, and it's just not worth it for us to fight it any longer. And that's really a fight that you started, Jack, and it was basically done by the time I became president.
I just was wondering what the plan is from your guys' point of view to kind of get this contained and the path forward.
well, what I was going to mention, I'd mentioned the regulation system. CFIA is in charge of the regulation and registration of these crops, but nowhere in their regulations can they look at economic hurt. So it is, and they establish their rules based on its final use, which is canola oil. So we at Mustard were not included in this until not that long ago. And we basically had to go knock on the door and ask to be let in. So that's why it got so far without us. And so now we're pushing hard, and as I said, we got that letter from the Japanese buying co-op. We're going to be looking for more, I guess, responses from the processors, the buyers, and anybody else that we can talk to. We've talked to our provincial government, the Minister of Trade and Agriculture. We had a short discussion with Minister MacDonald, but we've asked for a second one, and hopefully that'll be coming along. And then, yeah, just keep pushing and kicking and screaming.
So was the goal here just, sorry Bob, but is the goal to deregister that product and get it taken off the markets? I mean, it just blows me away to think that CFIA, the people who are around registering an agriculture product, can't think of the potential risks by not consulting with those people who might be affected by this. I think it's so lame to say, well, it was going to be destined for, the oil market, and so therefore they never thought to talk to us. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, the guy's got to be brain dead who didn't think to consult with all the other people that would be impacted. I mean, once that's in the system, it's almost, well, not impossible, but nearly impossible to pull it back out.
There's an argument that can be made, Jack, that there would be a few people that have that affliction that you just mentioned. Norm, you want to respond to that? Or Rick?
Well, I spent a few years in Ottawa, like the two of you with CFA doing some lobbying, and I met a few of those people you speak of, Jack. But also you also have to look at who's behind it. Maybe canola industry in Western Canada, in Canada, is always looking for more acres. So they see a possibility of maybe another 1 million acres in the Palliser Triangle area of Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Okay, but on that, just a minute, Norm, let me interrupt you there. On that issue, and maybe you've already mentioned it and I didn't hear it, but what is this new seed going to offer canola growers that the other one doesn't? Like, why would they suddenly grow another 1,000,000 acres because this new seed is available?
Well, some of their verbiage is around global warming, and that they're going to, as the climate heats up, they're going to need varieties that can survive the heat blast of summer on during blooming, and that's when it just gets too hot for the crop to keep up to the transevaporation, and then it just starts dropping its petals. The Junceas are a little bit more resistant to the heat blast than canola is. So that's some of their rhetoric on it. Whether that's actually going to translate into more bushels per acre with this specific variety, we're not sure. But just because it gives them a few more bushels, maybe, is it worth routing out a whole industry such as the mustard industry in Western Canada?
But
And
you're
I know
a
the
canola
ASF
grower
doesn't
too.
like us talking about it, but yes, it's like the wheat, but it's also could have the same effect to the mustard industry as the triffid had on the flax industry in Western Canada. Whether it was accidental on purpose, the release of that one bin of triffid flax into the export system or not, we don't know. But it happened, and we went from 2 million acres of flax annually to a few 100,000 acres.
You mentioned one other thing, and Jack and Wayne, I'd like you to respond to this one. Are you telling me that the CFIA does not take into consideration economic impact? They do no economic analysis on it?
No.
No, they don't. No, they don't, Bob. One of the problems with CFIA, and we've all dealt with them. They just look at what they inspect, so on and so forth, and those rules and regulations, and don't go beyond that. And what I find with CFIA, or have found when I was in Ottawa, uh, they don't have people that really completely understand the total industry and the implications of one on the other. Um, like even in the beef inspection plants, the board I chair up here, there is there's common sense doesn't enter the picture sometimes. They do not look at the economic factors. They just don't.
But the CFIA, and I don't even know if I should bring this up because we had a guest on to talk about ostriches, and I don't know if you've watched the WW5 episode that's disputing just about everything that our guest told us on the podcast. But the CFIA does economic analysis when there's chickens with AI, right? They determine that those chickens need to be euthanized because it would have an impact on the economy of the rest of the industry.
I don't think it's the economy they're looking at as much as it is the impact on the health of other birds or animals in the system. They're not looking at it specifically from the economic impact on other farmers. They're looking at it from the health and safety impact
Animal welfare.
of other animals, yeah.
Animal
Yeah.
welfare.
One thing I noticed when I was doing a lot of discussions in Ottawa and here in Western Canada, there's a lot of good people, farm kids, that went into AAFC and CFIA 30 years ago, and they haven't been on a farm since. And so they've lost their farm view, and they've gained the, excuse me, Wayne, but the Ottawa view.
There's an Ottawa bubble, Norm.
Yes, there
Hey,
is.
Wayne is the first one to admit that, Norm. You don't have to apologize for that.
But
Jack.
I understand that they can't look just at the economics. I mean, I get that. It's a science-based system.
Yep.
They're using science to evaluate the risk, and that should be the predominant factor there. I understand that totally. And but the simple fact of life is here is we have more than one system around the world in which we as agriculture producers who export so much have to live within. So we know full well that there are a lot of systems, a lot of countries, European Union being one, Japan being another, where the concern over genetically modified product is critical, and it will determine whether you get into the country or not. For example, we have to sign paperwork on soybeans now to prove that that soybean did not get grown on land that had been cleared out of virgin forests, okay? This is mainly targeted at Brazil as an initiative to discourage people buying soybeans and discourage the clearing of land, keep the lungs of the world alive, etc. But it's also because we live in an area where land's being cleared, it applies to us as well, all right? So that being said, it's something you can work around, but for an area like say Peace River or others that are still clearing land right now, there'll be a cutoff date, and if it's been cleared before this date, no problems, no questions asked. If it's being cleared after this date, which has been brought in, then you're going to not be able to. Those beans will have to be segregated. I presume it'll apply to canola as well. I don't know that, but I know it applies to soybeans. So my point being is there are a lot of issues that impact our ability to trade. And if they're not thought about around a collective table, then unintended consequences are going to happen all the time. And you know that the industry, you can't roll the clock back on some of these things. You can't put the genie back in the jar, for God's sakes. So if there isn't a thoughtful process, then product shouldn't be brought on. There should be a risk analysis at least done within the industry, within Ag Canada, within the general farm organizations, to evaluate a particular variety being licensed and what will be the impact on the whole industry, the commodity itself, and then the related commodities around it. It may not be CFA that can say no, but there could be a political decision not to proceed. And that was the situation with the wheat around the CFA board table. We had the big grain pools who were exporting. We had the Canadian Wheat Board at that time. And so the decision was made after surveying all the countries and all their buyers. This would be net negative to the long-term trade by introducing a product like that. The decision was made to not proceed. But CFIA didn't come in and stop it. So this once again shows the strength of having a collective thought process within the farm community with the ministers, provincially and federally, so that you deal with the risks ahead of time. You don't let something get a license and say, oh my God, we just lost the mustard industry. We just lost, this industry. That's just really short-sighted. And if we're going to grow our agriculture, we can't be short-sighted. That's just not an option that it takes us to a good place in 5 and 10, 20 years down the road.
Okay, I want to go to collaboration, but I got to ask you the question, Jack. How did you sign that document? Did you lie on the document that you're not
My
growing it on
elevator,
virgin?
before where I sell my beans and it goes through, they basically ask the question whether this product, before it goes to the elevator, that fact. We don't have our elevator, our co-op, right now is not set up to segregate those beans. So in effect, we're going to, though, probably at some point have to do that, because there are acres continuing to be cleared up here, and in a rotation on the farm, they're going to be growing soybeans.
Well,
So
but
where are those beans? They're going to have to be kept separate from the European Union export. Now, most of our beans in Ontario right now go to crush, and they're for feed and oil consumed domestically, okay? It's not like it's a big export crop, so it'll have marginal impact. But these are the types of things that are going on all the time that we have to be tuned into.
well,
And I tell the
is
truth
that
all the time, Bob, if that's what you're implying.
is I'm making a phone call. Is that grandfathered? Like, look, 75% of our arable acres in Canada used to be virgin forest.
When the regulation was brought in, if land was in production before that regulation was done,
Okay.
then it's my understanding that it wouldn't apply to it. It's meant to really stop the clearing of virgin forest. It's meant to slow down that transition of the Amazon to soybean production, okay? But there's lots of unintended consequences of other countries that may be clearing land. I know in Canada and in the north it is an issue.
Okay, Norm, collaboration. My guess is you produce both mustard and canola on your farm. Does
Yes.
that mean you're sucking and blowing at the same time?
No, no. As Rick had said earlier, growing canola beside a mustard isn't a total disaster, but we have to keep the land that we grow the mustard on without canola grown on it. So we bought some land that was in alfalfa for the previous 15 years. So that's what we grow our mustard on, and we don't put canola on there.
Okay, on collaboration then, is the canola industry meeting with you guys?
I had a quick conversation with the chair of Sask Oilseed, which looks after canola, and we had said we would talk more, and he is also on the Canadian committee as well, and they're one of the biggest pushes to get this through. BASF is working with them on some studies that are coming up. I'm not sure if it's just this summer or the next couple, but yeah, Canola Council is involved. And yes, we should sit down. Rick actually presented to the Sask Oilseeds board, and didn't seem to gain a whole bunch of their favor. And Rick, you may want to say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I met with them and I laid out all the issues we have with it and the ways that it can affect our industry. And at the end of it, I asked them for their support in terms of a written letter. And I just never got anything back. So it's still hanging out there. In terms of the Canola Council, they are working hard with BASF to try and get this through, because they want and need more canola acres, and they see this as a huge opportunity. I'm not sure how that works, but they see it as that. And so I see they're doing some pollen flow studies and stuff like that for BASF, and it's kind of smoke and mirrors. Like I'm not sure that as a taxpayer I'm crazy about the Canola Council doing studies that are you can replicate in all kinds of data. There's all kinds of data on pollen flow, and so they're really in there behind them. So we're fighting a big giant here, right? Mustard 21. We have 3.5 full-time people. You can imagine how many people PSF have. They probably forget about that many people in a day, but so we're really having to fight a giant here, especially when the Canola Council gets on their side too.
Well, yeah, before I go to Wayne, I mean, this is, I think, and Jack made the point, unless you can collaborate with other primary producers, you have a big giant to fight. Go ahead, Wayne.
Well, you got to look at the seed companies here too. I mean, they're in this to make money for their shareholders, and they don't give a damn who they hurt in the process. If mustard goes by the wayside and they can sell more seed with plant breeders' rights to canola producers, then that's the game they will play. But from a country perspective and an industry perspective, the more diversification in terms of industries or commodities and crops in the agriculture sector, the better. And this is this will undermine that. So it's certainly worth the fight. I mean, we talked earlier about the wheat issue, and on that fight, wheat farmers won. And this one, I would say, see this one just as critical. It not only for mustard, but once you start going down this slippery slope, there's no way, as Jack said earlier, of bringing it back. And what's the implications of this variety of genetically modified canola on other crops or other export markets as well? Has any of that been looked at beyond mustard?
Well, I think there's a lot of other issues, like you say, Wayne. Like these exporters, are they prepared to mix this canola from BSF because it's yellow? Are they prepared to mix it with regular canola, and are the crushers prepared to take it? So there's still a lot of questions on both shipping and crushing as well.
And you can't clean it out in a seed cleaning machine, can you?
Certainly couldn't clean it out of brown and oriental. Maybe a little bit more success on yellow mustard, but there again, yellow mustard's the same color as that stuff too. So if you do end up with some seeds the same size, then you got a big problem, right? At the end of the day, the big issue is the pollen flow, the volunteers, that type of stuff. Like once you get this seed into the seed bank, it's going to be a huge, huge issue, way beyond what like BSF, quite frankly, is underestimating that.
And as Jack already said, that's there for years to come.
Yeah, I went to Manitoba one time in previous life and traveled out there and was with a farmer on a combine. He was combining corn. I'd never seen that before, so I wanted to go see it. His field was polluted with canola, his cornfield, and it was everything from cotyledon canola to flowering and everything in between. And I said to him, I said, "Oh, when was the last time you had canola on here?" He goes, 8 years ago. I haven't had canola on this field in 8 years. And it was a mat of volunteer canola. I've never seen it so thick.
Needs to buy a different combine, maybe.
No, we don't. We're talking about canola putting four pounds of seed on an acre, okay? And when you're harvesting, you're taking off, say, 60 bushels at 40 pounds each. It's 2,400 pounds. So just even if the combine's set pretty good, it's pretty easy to have 4 pounds an acre go over the back of the combine. I mean, it's impossible, even if you're trying to have your machine set up properly. I mean, these things are very, very, very difficult. And to your point, then you have a few varieties escape the first year, so therefore it goes to seed. So now you've got a seed bed in there after 1 or 2 years, if you can't control it absolutely every year, that's way higher than the normal seeding rate you'd have at a crop. And I mean, canola seed lasts forever. And I mean, there's only so much you can do with rotation to have virgin land. I mean, I'm really happy Norm's got that. But, even with that, you're now going to have to prove to your buyer that you're able to segment that seed from his farm all the way through the system. So now, all of a sudden, you're shipping containers, the price is up again. Is that going to make the crop profitable? Or have we just sacrificed what was a good 50% of the world's canola mustard crop simply because some people wanted a little more canola acreage? And I think it's a sad state of play when farmers who are growing canola, their council is basically advocating the demise of your industry by backing BSF on this.
Okay, so the CFIA. Oh, sorry, Wayne. Did you have something?
No, go ahead.
So the CFIA isn't really on your side. The canola industry wants an additional $1 million, which is kind of speculative, but they see growth if this is registered. You don't seem to have a lot of friends. What's the next step? Wayne, maybe they need to talk to the Ag Minister together with the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Secretary, who was Ag Minister for about 3 months. He seems to be a pretty understanding person with a good head on his shoulders.
Oh, Cody Blois is excellent, and in terms of people you're meeting with, Rick or Norm, Cody Blois would be a good one to meet with and explain the situation. He was Minister of Agriculture for a short time. He comes from the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia, and he's now Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, so he would be a good one to talk to. I'm going to mention it to Heath. I see Heath quite often because he's replaced me in Ottawa, McDonald. But this is a much bigger issue than just meeting with a couple of the ministers or influential people. This is I think it's a huge issue.
Maybe you
One
go ahead,
one
Mark.
thing that we or I've done, I've sent a letter to a couple, shall I say, former CFA executives, both Mary Robinson, who's on the
Yeah.
Senate Ag Committee, and our good Saskatchewan boy Todd Lewis. And I also included in a CC Cody Blois on that one as well, and just asking them to do whatever they can, and explaining our situation a little bit more, and whether we get an audience with the Senate Ag Committee or the House Ag Committee, whatever it be, we're trying to get our voice out there and be heard, and what I'm seeing from my angle is a solution to this is going to have to be political. It's not going to be regulations as they sit.
I would agree with you on that, Norman. I think it has to be a political solution, and that's what it came down to with the wheat issue and a couple others. And I would use, in terms of your discussions, the flax case as a prime example of how an industry or a commodity or crop, in terms of its export market, was destroyed. And so that's kind of an example of what is likely to happen here if this continues to go ahead. And the other point is, from a seed company's point of view, this for them is just all about more profit and more control over the farm community. That's what it is. So yeah, I think the people you've written to is important. Mary is absolutely great.
Would you consider it to be traitorous or treasonous if you involve the public? Public is always ready to weigh in on GMOs. In fact, I remember when I was at CFA and I was on a minister's GMO advisory committee, and they had invited church groups to be on that committee. And I mean, that kind of turned it into nothing more than a weekend retreat bear pit session, because what are church groups doing in a GMO advisory committee? They don't belong there any more than they do being on a committee and talking about how to manufacture automobiles, I don't think. But maybe you could involve the public.
I think this is something that North American agricultural industry is a bit naive about. This assumption that, and we bump into it all the time, particularly around glyphosate, this assumption that everybody should understand science. And if science says it's okay, period. And you should just be willing to take it. There isn't any room for production methodology rules. There isn't any room for a whole bunch of rules. Well, that's not, I don't accept that either. And I'm a science-based guy. I grow Roundup Ready soybeans, used to grow Roundup Ready canola. I keep up with the science and where it's standing and the health risks. But there's lots of other people in the world that want their food to be produced in a particular way. They're of the view that we're not kind of living in the trees anymore, starving from day to day, and the first nut you can find, you don't care how it's produced, you eat it. They're living in a world where they want to buy product produced the way they want it. So if they don't want child labor, they don't want child labor. If they don't want it on, bulldozed virgin forest, they don't want it on that way. And I can give you the list that goes on. And it behooves us as producers to treat them as consumers versus, nutcases. Because they're consumers and they have a lot of influence. And all you have to do is look at what's happened in Europe and other countries with production methodology, and they don't give up. And so I think it's important to understand them, And where possible, we should be trying our very best to accommodate them and work with them. So if there's an issue, if we can't resolve it together, we know that it's going to stay around for a long time. And I just think it's important to be connected in that way.
I agree, Jack. And one of the things that we have to look at in our markets as well, when canola is used, it's used for its oil, on the human side, and when canola is crushed, there are no GM markers in that canola oil. They're all left in the meal, and that generally goes for livestock feed. In soybeans, oil is the byproduct. They want the meal, so that's where the GM is there. And same with the mustard. They'll squeeze the oil out and use the mustard flour. They also use the oil too, but they're both used within the food industry. So we can't afford to have that GM marker in there at all.
All right. Anything else, Wayne?
I think it's, one of the, and it's something to think about, I guess, Rick and Norm. There will be a federal, provincial ministers and deputies meeting likely in July. There always is.
Yeah.
It might be worthwhile to try and get a point on the agenda there, and the impact on the mustard industry. But what's the long-term implications for the industry as a whole in Canada if we allow the seed companies, in this case, to run roughshod over us? Yes, I understand where canola producers are coming from. They're looking at maybe short-term gain for long-term pain, even in their industry. You never know, but that might be something you need to consider. The CFA, I think, is usually at those meetings, are they not, guys? They were. And it might be an angle just to mention it and get feedback on to see where the levers of power are that you need to push to not allow this to happen.
Are general farm organizations weighing in on this?
Usually the CFA usually attends those meetings.
No, I mean if they're weighing in on the issue.
Oh yeah, they should be. I mean, the general farm organization should be there in terms of the broad picture.
Have you tried them, Norm?
We're actually a member, voting member of APAS here in Saskatchewan, and we've taken it to their Grains and Transportation Committee. We'll be working with them as we go. Thank you for that one, Wayne. I never even thought of getting in front of the FedProv meeting, and I just forget where that one is. I think it's in Ontario this year. But anyway, yeah, good point. Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Jack? Rick?
No, just want to thank you for your time and bringing us on here today, Bob.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Wayne and Jack and Norm and Rick Mitzel. Thanks again to our sponsor, Keystone Agricultural Producers. And thank you to the viewer and the listener. And remember, if you've eaten today or will be eating today, thank a farmer.